Hello, everybody. My topic for the study session is 194O, which is the TDS section, and it talks about payment of certain sums by e-commerce operator to e-commerce participant. So, uh, one second. Yeah. Basically, if we understand the section 194O, e-commerce operator, which provides a facility or a platform for the e-commerce participant, has to deduct a TDS at the rate of 1% while making the final payment to the e-commerce participant. Uh, for like better understanding, we can just know the basic three terms, which are self-explanatory. E-commerce operator is a person who owns, operates, manages digital or electronic facility or platform for electronic commerce. Electronic commerce is basically means of uh, supply of goods or service or both, including digital products over an electronic network. Here, e-commerce participant is the one who is a resident in India and selling goods or services through digital mode. So these were the basic terms that were used in the section. And moving forward, it has few provisions. Just like any other TDS section, here also we have a limit on which there will be no TDS deduction. The limit is that any individual or HUF whose gross amount of such sale or services during the previous year, if it does not exceed 5 lakh rupees, then the e-commerce operator need not deduct any tax and pay the full amount to the e-commerce participant, provided that along with this 5 lakhs, the individual or HUF, the e-commerce participant, also furnishes PAN. Because as you all know, if there is no PAN, the TDS is deducted at a higher rate. So PAN is mandatory, and also the gross amount should not exceed 5 lakhs in the previous year. Uh, Moving on, there are few small two provisions as well. One is that if TDS is deducted under this section, then it need not be deducted under any other section. Um, uh, as If we move on further, we'll get to know that there are sections which can come into picture. So at that time, 194O will override the other sections, and if TDS is deducted under this section, then no tax will be deducted any further. Other than that, there's this small provision that if e-commerce operator is receiving any amount which is not at all connected with any sale or services, then in that case, this provision will not apply. Then, uh, depending on the nature of the amount received, that particular TDS section will be applied. So the reason why this topic was picked up was because recently CBDT has issued some guidelines so as to remove any confusion or difficulty which the consumers might be facing or the e-commerce operator might be facing. So that's when a guideline was issued to clarify some of the things or put a light on some of the situations that could possibly arise. I would switch to the original document so as to continue the explanation. Yeah. So this is the guidelines that were issued by the CBDT, and and it is basically in a question answer format. So the first question was, who should deduct tax at source where there are multiple e-commerce operators involved in a transaction? Now when they're talking about multiple e-commerce operators, they are trying to say that there can be two e-commerce operators in this particular transaction or more. One is the person or the one is the um, uh, person who provides the platform or network. One is the e-commerce operator on the seller side, and one is the e-commerce operator on the buyer side. Examples could be Amazon. If you like search, it comes on the buyer side, e-commerce operator, and Shopify comes on the seller side e-commerce operator. They can be like Amazon of the seller is also e-commerce operator of the seller side. So it varies, but it basically when it talks about multiple e-commerce operators, this is what they're talking about. So the first situation that they have mentioned here is when the seller side e-commerce operator is not the actual seller of the goods or services. So here basically it just provides a platform and not the ECO is not the actual seller of the goods or services. So in this case, if the diagram is self-explanatory, that there are four different person involved: the buyer side ECO, seller side ECO, and seller. And the compliance of 194O will be done by the seller side ECO because yeah.
No, 1 second. This is not self-explanatory. Can you just explain what exactly is this? Because you have
Hmm.
read it multiple times. Maybe you're able to grasp it. But एक बार वो chart explain कर देंगे तो it will be
Yeah.
easy.
So basically, a buyer side ECO will provide an interface to the buyer. So buyer will come to the buyer side ECO to see the products of the seller. So, and seller side ECO is providing a platform to the seller to sell his products. Now, it can be one also, it can be two different parties also. Now, now the question comes to that who will deduct the TDS, the buyer side ECO or the seller side ECO? Now, in this case, now the final remittance of the amount which the buyer is paying is is sent out by the seller side ECO. So, in this case, seller side ECO will deduct TDS, and buyer side ECO will not have any role in the compliance of Section 194O. And the TDS will be deducted on the gross amount.
Can you
And the,
explain this with an example of, say, Flipkart? Nitin goes on Flipkart, uh, something like
yeah,
that.
yeah. So,
Looks for
okay.
a table,
Uh,
something. Yeah.
yeah. So I'm not like specifically sure about if like Flipkart obviously comes in the buyer side ECO, but there is a Flipkart for the sellers also to put their products on. So we are just taking Flipkart's two different versions. So the Flipkart with the consumer interface,
Hmm.
we go on Flipkart, we order a product. So the remittance is through Flipkart. Right, but we are paying Flipkart, we are not paying to the seller. So the amount goes to Flipkart, and then Flipkart will cut his commission and deduct TDS, and then give the final remittance to the seller. So in this case, Flipkart of the seller side will deduct TDS.
Got
Yeah.
So
Situation
Flipkart is
two
there.
is where in this case also multiple ECOs are involved, but the seller side ECO is the actual seller of the goods or services. Here, it can be a little confusing with just this particular line, but as far as this uh, diagram is concerned, what my thought went on to, for example, Nika. Nika is also an ECO because it is a platform. Various products are there on the Nika platform, and there is also Amazon, right? So Amazon ka consumer interface is there, Amazon's seller interface is there. Now, Nika itself is an ECO, but Nika products are also there on Amazon. So, in this case, there are two ECOs involved in this transaction. Right. So when two ECOs are involved in this transaction, the question comes to who is going to comply with 194O. So in this case also, the ECO that is providing the interface for another ECO and which is making the final payment to that ECO will deduct TDS under section 194, which is ECO 2 as per the diagram. And as per the example, that is Amazon, which is selling Nika's products. The second question comes down to that e-commerce operators may be levying convenience fees or charging commission for each transaction, and seller might levy logistics or delivery fees for the transaction. Payments may also be made to the platform or network provider. for facilitating the transaction, would these form part of gross amount for the purpose of TDS? For charging shipping charges and packaging charges, these all are normal charges that a seller would charge because to deliver the product, these are normal expenses for a seller who is on the ECO. Further to that, the buyer side ECO will also charge a commission or a convenience fee, and seller side ECO will also charge a convenience fee. In that case, the seller may choose to add this in his final invoice or just a part of it also. It is on the discretion of the seller. So they have given an example to make it more clear. In this example, if a product is of 100 rupees and the shipping charges is of 10 rupees, packaging charges of 5 rupees. So now the seller has added 3 rupees of convenience charge, which is basically the commission or convenience charge that is charged by the ECO, and it includes both buyer side and seller side. So including the commission, including the shipping charge, including the packaging charge, that all is included, and that forms the gross amount for deducting TDS. So in this case, when you add all of these amounts, the seller issues an invoice of 118 and the TDS is deducted on 118 only, because that is an expense for the seller. So that will form part of the gross amount. Um, then in it is also like there's this clarification that if any amount is if the ECO has received any amount which is in connection with the main transaction, then it is not liable. Then he is not liable to deduct TDS under any other provision. It is as like I mentioned in the beginning that if tax is deducted under this section, then it need not be deducted under any other section, provided that particular transaction or any other provision is related to the main transaction only. But here comes the catch. There is this 194S. We had discussed this section before last to last study session, which is regarding the virtual digital asset. So 194S talks about any person responsible for paying to any resident any sum by way of consideration for transfer of a virtual digital asset shall, at the time of credit of such sum to the account of the resident or payment with whichever is earlier, deduct an amount equal to 1% of such sum. So in this case, when so we don't know that what that particular ECO is about. So the guideline has covered as much as possible the different types of ECO. So if on that particular ECO, virtual digital asset has been like is being transferred, so in that case, TDS will be deducted under 194S. Now, since TDS has been deducted under 194S, it will override 194O, and the TDS will not be deducted under 194O, even though it involves ECO. I uh, uh, in this particular case, 194S, um, uh, the deduction rate is same, but yeah, when we will declare it in the return, it will come in under 194S. And similarly, they are talking about 194H also. 194H is the commission or brokerage, which is deducted at 5%. Now, why this came into picture is because e-commerce operators, whether it is seller side or buyer side, they are charging a commission. Now, since they are charging a commission, there is a possibility that whether they should also deduct TDS under 194H. So it has been clarified that um, since the tax has been deducted under 194O, it will not be deducted under 194H. That is the general rule that they have already established, that if the TDS is deducted under 194, it will not be deducted under any other section. Payments may also be made to the platform for facilitating the transactions. These would form part of gross amount. So, like I said, it can be that a third party is giving a platform, is a platform provider. So, in that case, any fees which is given to that particular provider also for facilitating the transaction, that will also form part of the gross amount. But only if it can be linked to a specific transaction. If it cannot be linked to a specific transaction, it is the lump sum basis, then it need not be included in the gross amount, because then you cannot know which transaction it relates to. So here that they have given one another example that, a seller has invoiced 100 rupee uh, invoice, and the buyer sends 100 rupees to the buyer side ECO, and buyer side ECO charges 5 rupees as a commission. They kept their 5 rupees, they forward their 95 rupees to the seller side ECO. Now seller side also has kept their 10 rupees commission, so the seller ultimately gets 85 rupees. So the product was supposed to be 85 rupees, and then all these charges came into picture. So, in this case, the responsibility of withholding and depositing is with the seller issue. This is, uh, as I said earlier, that this is just examples. The baseline was that the seller side ECO is the one that deducts the tax and deposits the tax to the government. The next question comes into the picture is, how will GST, various state levies and taxes other than GST such as VAT, sales tax, excise duty, CST be treated when calculating gross amount of sales of goods or provisions or service as per the provisions of section 194. So in this case, in the first the two paragraphs that you can see, they are explaining regarding 194Q. Now, one thought comes that why we are explaining 194Q in the middle of 194O, because the clarifications or the circular that has been provided for 194Q applies as it is with 194O. So here what they have mentioned is that uh, obviously we know 194Q is a TDS on purchase of goods. Now GST component has been indicated separately. Now, when GST has been indicated separately, tax is to be deducted on the amount without including such GST. However, if the tax is deducted on payment basis because the payment is earlier than the credit, the tax would be deducted on the whole amount, as it is not possible to identity that payment with GST component of the amount to be invoiced in future. So the similar action will be taken with 194O as well, that if any transaction is invoiced indicating GST separately, then the amount without including GST will be the amount considered for deducting tax under 194O, and this applies to both GST component and VAT sales excise duty components. So in this case, when 194O comes into picture, uh, component of GST or VAT or anything, if it's indicated separately, it will be deducted without including GST or any other tax. But if it's in lump sum, then the entire amount will be considered as gross amount, because you cannot separate the GST component from that. How will adjustment for purchase return take place? Again, a similar example has been given regarding 194Q, that if the tax has been deducted under 194Q and there is a purchase return, then in the next purchase against the same seller, uh, the tax will be adjusted. And if the purchase return is replaced, then in that case there will be no adjustment. So in the same case, it is regarding 194O as well, that if you having a purchase return, that means tax already is deducted for that particular purchase, and that will be adjusted against the next purchase, next transaction by the deductor with the same deductee in the same financial year. And if the purchase return is replaced, then there will be no adjustments. And the final question comes down to, कि how will discounts given by seller as an e-commerce participant or by any of the multiple e-commerce operators be treated while calculating gross amounts. So we all know that now we have different events coming. We have Republic Day sale. We have if there is Diwali, there is Diwali sale. So there will be discounts. So how we will need to consider that discounts while calculating the gross amount. So in these situations, if the discount is given by the seller himself, then the product price will be reduced because it's on seller's discretion if he wants to give the discount or not. So in that case, the product price is reduced. So label price of product 100 and the seller offers a discount of 10. 90 will be receivable from the buyer. In this case, the seller will invoice the buyer for 90 and hence the TDS will be calculated on 90. But in case the buyer ECO or seller ECO has given a discount, now this the seller doesn't want to give the discount, but the platform wants to give the discount. It can be any marketing tactic or just want to increase the customer attraction or anything. It's just a marketing technique. So if they are offering a discount, in that case, the seller receives full consideration for the product. However, part of it is received from the buyer and the balance is discharged to the seller by the buyer or seller ECO, as the case may be. So in this diagram, the seller has asked for 100 rupees, but since it was a discount from a buyer ECO or a seller ECO, the buyer pays only 90 rupees. Now, since the in this particular case, buyer side ECO has given a discount, so buyer side will receive 90 rupees, add 10 on its own, and give 100 to the seller side ECO. Now, in this situation, we have assumed that there is no commission or any other XYZ thing playing on. Otherwise, obviously, they will keep their own commission or convenience charge and then only remit the rest of the amount. But in this particular case, we have assumed everything else as the constant. So in this case, buyer side will add 10 rupees, give 100 to the seller side ECO, and that will be remitted to the seller, and he receives 100 rupees only, which is what he had asked for. So in this case as well, the seller side ECO will deduct the tax, and the gross amount will be the invoice amount only, which is 100 rupees that the seller had asked for. So this is all about my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, please go ahead with all the questions, whatever we have for Malika.
Malika, I just have one question.
Yeah.
So you were telling that Flipkart
Mm-hmm.
acts as, EC for the seller as well as to the buyer, right? As in
Yeah.
they have two
Yeah.
different. But I don't think that is the case because see, Flipkart as a whole is a e-commerce operator. So just by giving a user interface different to a seller and a buyer doesn't mean they are two different e-commerce operators.
Right. So I did mention that both seller side ECO and buyer side ECO can be one and the same as well. It's just for the purpose of explanation how the transaction will flow. I just took it as two versions, but obviously it can be same as well. Both buyer side and seller side can be just one big platform for both the participants.
No, I think the interpretation that we are trying to make here is the e-commerce operator is always a one person unless there is two different e-commerce operator platform used to sell a product. That's when e-commerce for seller and e-commerce operator for a buyer will come into picture.
Hmm.
When we are talking about Flipkart, it is a single e-commerce operator.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
Makes
so
sense.
we want to understand if there is any such platform where there are two different e-commerce operator who's coming into the picture and selling goods. One e-commerce operator is directly associated with buyer and one e-commerce operator is associated with seller. And these two operators come together and make a chain. I think that is what the
Yeah.
department is also trying to say here and not based on the interface.
Yeah, I totally agree. I tried researching on both sides of ECO, but there's hardly any information on the internet. But I'll still search again and get back to you on different ECOs.
I think if we go to
Right.
PhonePe, we'll find out that in PhonePe there are again lot of sellers listed on PhonePe. So PhonePe is a one side a seller ECO, but then again it is hosting some other ECO on its own platform. So whenever we encounter such a case where entering one ECO app and then again from like think about Flipkart, we open Flipkart and in Flipkart there is again one ECO called Myntra and we are trying to buy through Myntra via Flipkart. So there can be a possibility. Like aggregator platforms is the one possibility which aggregate all the platforms.
Alternatively, could it be payment gateway that is used for each seller?
Yeah, that is also a network provider facilitating the transaction.
But can payment gateway be considered as ECO definition? What is the ECO definition? What is the definition of ECO?
That we
So,
have to look into because they
e-
Bhavika,
definitely
share the screen
charge.
again
yeah, I'll share this.
where you have mentioned the definition of
Mm-hmm.
ECO. Yeah, zoom it. Oh, I don't think so. It didn't fit in the definition. What do you think, Nia?
It is just a digital facility, if that's what we are considering.
Platform for electronic commerce. Right. We'll have to look into it in greater detail. It is possible though, because they charge a per transaction fee
The thing
from the
is,
seller for sure.
RBI already defined any payment gateway as PSPs, payment service providers, which has a separate definition. That's why I'm thinking it should not be covered under electronic commerce operator because then in normal circumstances also payment gateway needs to deduct TDS and everything.
But
That
if you
makes
see
sense.
Paytm
Yeah.
also has its own section where it sells products. So
Hmm.
then what would we call that? Because there is one payment section where you make all the transaction. There's another section, Paytm market type, where all the
Correct.
products are there and you buy it.
Payment
So
mall.
yeah, so
So,
in
so
that
actually
case,
in
it is
that,
like half e-commerce operator.
no, it's not half e-commerce. I think Paytm, we know Paytm as only a brand because we don't know the backends. But maybe Paytm Bank or Paytm Payment Gateway is registered with the name of Paytm Bank Limited, and there is another company called Paytm Mall Limited. Okay, which is
Could be.
who is responsible for all the selling of all the merchandise products. So there possibility is that there could be two different entities. We just know the brand because everything is served under same umbrella. So,
Right.
but yeah, maybe your case is right. Paytm could be one example where there can be a Paytm Bank or say suppose Paytm app only as the seller ECO and then can be Paytm Mall Limited, which is a buyer ECO. Maybe they are again held by the same company, any holding company. But yeah, there are two different entities.
No, and there is
Possible.
one more thing that when we get offers in the transaction section itself, so when we redeem that offer, it directs us to the site of that particular seller. So isn't that is like an intermediary for it's like a buyer side ECO which is directing to the seller side ECO?
Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Could be.
Hmm. Okay, I just want to have I have one question. Just go to the last question of the circular where you mentioned about the discount provided by the buyer. And in such a case, when buyer provides the discount, because seller is anyway getting 100 rupees, so TDS will come
Mm-hmm.
on 100 rupees. Where is the second part where if seller side provides any discount of say 10 rupees? I think in
So
that case,
it
90 rupees will
that
be the gross amount, right?
no,
Why
but in
is not
that
covered?
case also, now the seller side ECO is giving a discount. So
Correct.
isn't this the same thing that, for example, invoices of 100 rupees, buyer is giving to the buyer side ECO 100 rupees, the same is remitted to seller side. And for example, seller has given 90, so it will add 10 and give it to seller 100, right? Isn't it the same thing? If the seller side ECO is giving the discount, the same what buyer side ECO is doing, same the seller side ECO will also do.
But buyer
It
has
will
to
add
alter.
10 rupees.
No, no, sorry, come again. What you said? Because buyer has to pay 90.
Yeah,
Even
buyer
means
will pay
whoever is
90.
going to whoever is going to give the discount, buyer has to pay 90 rupees in both the case, correct? So in
Yeah,
my case, suppose buyer pay 90 rupees to buyer side ECO.
yeah.
Then
Then
buyer side
the same
ECO,
90 will go to the seller side ECO. Seller
okay,
side will add 10 rupees and give to seller
correct. So in
100.
that case, now in this case, what will be the gross amount for TDS deduction? 90 or
The
100?
gross amount is 100 because seller didn't want the discount to be given, right? So in that case,
Hmm.
the seller will receive 100. So the gross amount that is being received by the seller is 100.
Mhm. Okay, I'm just cu- curious that why this particular example, the other way, is not covered here in the circular. Okay,
So
we can
because it
agree on
is
that,
written,
but I'm
no,
not very sure.
that however part of it is received from the buyer and the balance is discharged to the seller by the buyer ECO or seller ECO as the case may be. So that's why they have explained only one case.
Hmm. Okay, okay, yeah. Anyone else?
Yeah, so I have a standard question which I have. Purpose. Purpose of this.
Purpose of this guidelines is just that if some similar situations arise, because obviously the purpose of issuing a guideline is because there must be some confusions or issues that might be arising. So that's why guideline almost covering every possible aspect has been issued so that no further confusions are there in particularly 194O.
No, as in purpose of this, I mean, this entire section. Like, I remember we had done a small internal audit of a textile brand which was, listed on almost all e-commerce, and they used to receive, whatever revenue from those e-commerce via deducting of 194H and 194C. Under 2, 3 sections they were deducting, and they were getting the money, and that is how they were sort of operating. So, ये 194O, when is this applicable from, Malika? When was this
These are
applicable from?
just guidelines. So 194 has been there from a very long time, as far as I remember. Not too
194O.
long, but 194 has
One
been into function.
194O
Yeah, 194O.
has been
Yeah,
okay.
probably uh, more than 2 years. That do I know. But it's not a very recent section that has been introduced.
Okay, it was already always there, is what you're trying to tell.
Yeah, not very old also, but not too recent also.
Okay, okay. Uh, so okay, what if we have our own website? Right, I have my own website. I sell. Customer comes, buys. What do I do then? Buys, and then I get the
So
funds.
that is the seller's own website, right? That
Hmm.
is the seller is not going to someone else's website or platform to sell his own products.
But
If we are
I'm still
selling it
doing
on our own
e-commerce.
product, yeah. So, but we are just a seller who is selling products on an electronic media, like through electronic means. But e-commerce operator won't come into picture in this case. We are
Okay,
selling it directly. The customer comes to our website and we are directly getting the amount.
okay, understood, understood. Does this apply to the service-based e-commerce websites also, or is it only for the goods?
No, no, it is including both sale of goods or provision of services.
Okay. So even in provision of services, the TDS rate is 1%, or that
Yes,
is
yes.
the gross amount.
No, all the provisions are same for whether be it goods or services.
Okay. Okay. That's it.
So just to imagine a case where it's your own website, there are no distinct three parties, right? For deducting and then paying. So I think that falls apart there itself.
Yeah, the TDS section won't come into picture.
Right, that would just be a tax deposit.
Hmm.
Okay.